today's exciting interview, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Books to Life Marketing, the team making it all possible. They specialize in helping authors bring their stories to life through expert publishing, marketing, and media exposure. They're behind some of the most inspiring authors' journeys we've seen. If you're an author looking to elevate your book, Books to Life Marketing is the partner you want in your corner. And our guest today is Ann Ward Crocker, and she's the author of Close Friends, Cathedral Adventure. I really appreciate you coming by, and a little bit of the book description of this is an earthworm inadvertently taken to Washington National Cathedral, where their woodland plant friends destined to become a wildflower display during an annual festival of flowers. The toad is discovered and left outside. I don't want to give up any more, but that sounds really interesting. So tell me, why did you decide, what inspired you to write the book?
The fact that I had a toad in a plant. It was an unusual experience, to say the least, and normally I would never pick them up, but I had no choice. I couldn't take him into the cathedral, so I left him outside. But then, of course, I couldn't find him when we got ready to leave. But he haunted me for a year, and I thought it was a good story, or I could make a story out of it. That was my inspiration.
All right, so that's a pretty interesting inspiration, to say the least, of deciding to write a book. And this is not your first book, is it?
No, I've written compiled a cookbook. I wrote a recipe column for the local paper in Herndon, Virginia. And I had amassed all these recipes that were not mine. Now, I decided before I retired from that, I would put them in a cookbook, which I had experienced because I worked as a home economist for the Washington Gas Light Company. And we made cookbooks, so that was a no-brainer.
So writing this book, how long did it take you to write?
40 years. Yeah, because I took a class, because I've never done anything like this. But I thought I had the opportunity to take a class at the local community college, and I got the toad and earthworm out of the town of Herndon, but I didn't get them to the cathedral. And of course, that was the whole point of the story. So I put him in and collected the information in a box over the years. And then when I turned 88, I'm almost 96 now, I decided I ought to finish up all these loose ends and finish the story here in the retirement home. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Wow. Okay. So 40 years in the making. All right. So what do you think was the biggest challenge writing the book?
The computer. Because I was on onion skin carbon paper and a portable typewriter that I'd used in college, and trying to deal with it, because everything nowadays is by computer. You don't go... Very few people I see face to face. I'm glad to see your face. Anyway, that's it.
I got it.
That was my challenge, and it still is.
How did you learn the computer later in life?
I took classes at the community college. We were fortunate to live close to the Northern Virginia Community College. And my husband worked for IBM, so it was inevitable. And then I was secretary of an organization, and they went to the computer, and so I figured I had to learn it. Plus the fact I'm a genealogist, and the people I was working with said, you've got to get all this on a computer. That was in 1990. Here we are.
Okay, in 1990. All right, so you talked about the computer being the biggest challenge. Then the process of finally getting the book together. Tell us.
It's together because I knew I had this toad and I had this worm and I had the plant, but the cathedral, they were separated, but they were friends. So I had to get them together, and I had to get them a new home because their home where we dug them up was scheduled for a housing development. And that's typical of today's situations. And so anyway, and there's a beautiful woods on the other side of the cathedral. And incidentally, the grounds of the cathedral are called Close. And that's the Close in Close Friends really refers to the cathedral close.
Yeah.
As well as close being together. So, anyway.
No, absolutely. It's when you hear about it and you say to yourself, okay, so is this a children's book or is this more?
Yeah, basically. However, some of my friends said, this is not a children's book. And then others say this is one that grandparents would read their grandchildren. And so it's for everybody because it's about friendship, basically. And friendship, as I look back over the years, is a very important part of life.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit about this, but then we're going to highlight your life and looking at specifically how the book relates to your life in so many ways. You're talking about frogs and toads, but then everyone wants to know how your brain is still going at 96 and you're smart as a tack and you understand.
That's true. Not everybody would agree on that one.
Well, when you see these people that are in their 50s forgetting completely that you've definitely lived a long life and an exciting life. So let's talk about Ann Ward Crocker's life. Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk. Are you related to Betty Crocker?
And I had a sister, Betty, but of course her last name wasn't Crocker. But because I worked with food and was a professional home economist in the beginning, I was often equated with the Crocker of the media. However, it's just been, I autographed Betty Crocker cookbooks and Betty's sister. And that's not, she rests in peace. She's gone now, but I had fun with that.
Okay. So basically your career started, did you go to college?
Yeah, and that's when I first got to the Cathedral because I'm Episcopalian and the Canterbury Club there would take busloads of us to the Cathedral, which was only a very small part of it had been built in the late 40s. And we sat in the steps of the and heard great speakers. And then I lived near there. I lived in Washington for 10 years, fairly close to the Cathedral, so I could watch it being built. And that was fascinating to see those stonemasons because they had a little white building in the yard and you could watch through an open window how they were doing those gargoyles and different things. Oh, anyway.
No, it's absolutely interesting. So that basically your college days has to do with the Cathedral. So where'd you go to college?
No, University of Maryland, but I only got to the Cathedral maybe 4 times the whole time I was in college because as I say, we would have and I see, there you go. That's an old age thing. We would have not conferences, but
that's okay. No, I just said
the way I got there and a number of times, and then it was just a great place to visit. Just a great place to visit and go to church. When they were talking too much.
That's perfect. That's a good thing. You're talking too much. That's exactly what we want to get this information out of your story. So basically, the Cathedral. That's where you got the idea of the Cathedral at the University of Maryland then, correct?
That's when I was first introduced to it, yes. I've been there many times since because I've been active in the church and we had conferences there. And I've spent the night several weekends there over my lifetime.
Okay, so the Cathedral's a very important place. But I want to just go back to...
Indeed.
Go back to the University of Maryland. What did you major in the University of Maryland?
Nutrition and dietetics. Food.
And see, but it was very interesting. Nutrition. So you were going to be a dietitian at one point.
Yes, but the only option open to me for an internship was to join the Army and go to Fort Hood, Texas. And my mother was seriously ill and I could not go to Texas. Marriott hired me before I even graduated. So I went with them.
Yeah. And then, so did you graduate?
Oh, yeah, I finished what I started. It might take me 40 years, but I do finish what I started.
Now, let's talk about, so you got hired by Marriott? Okay.
Right before, as I said before. And I was actually manager of a small cafeteria downtown. But that year, when you're 21, and you have to work every weekend and every holiday, it is not the best career to be in. So I resigned after a year. And they wanted to know why, and I told them that I had to go to church. And that, for the Marriotts, is important because, of course, they're more Mormon, and church is very important to the Mormon. So they put me in the office 9 to 5 job, and that changed my life. And I met my husband.
So you met your husband. So tell us a story about meeting your husband.
Well, I lived in the Wesley Heights part of D.C., the bus was near a American university, and we were the first people to get on it. And every morning, the same gentleman would get on with their briefcases and tie and sit in the same seats, and you did not sit in their seats. So I knew that I was relegated to the back. My husband-to-be would look like one of them with the briefcase, so I didn't pay attention. But one morning, he sat down beside me, and the rest, as they say, I met him on the bus.
Wow. Okay, and how old were you then? You said you were working for Marriott?
No, I was 23, I guess, when I met him. Yeah.
Did you continue to be at Marriott after you met him?
Oh, yeah, I lasted 4 years. But there again, there were extenuating circumstances where I was living, and I took the summer off to be a Girl Scout counselor in a camp in Massachusetts for a friend. That's where I learned a lot of the nature things that I enjoy because it was a great place to be. And then I went with the Washington Gas Light Company, and that was like play compared to Marriott. Shouldn't say that out loud.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Interesting. Okay, so let's dive deeper into this because this is just really some intriguing stuff because it's fascinating. So you basically, the cathedral is really the backdrop of the story where you continue to visit it. So you guess you lived in the area of Maryland your whole life then?
No, I never lived in Maryland except at college. I lived in Virginia I lived in the district until we got married. And then we got an apartment because both of us were commuting at that point. We got an apartment in Arlington, and then we moved to Herndon. We bought a house in Herndon for $17,000.
Got it. How far were you from the cathedral from where you lived?
In D.C., about 2 miles.
Okay, so the University of Maryland wasn't that close to the cathedral then?
So University of Maryland is a good half-hour, 45-minute bus ride, I never rode.
But once you moved to D.C., you became really close to the cathedral.
Yes, yeah, because that's when I lived near the cathedral, yes.
Oh, wow. So it's really interesting to know, based on the wanting to write, why you wrote the book, to think about ultimately the reason is because the cathedral just is part of your life.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so how did it become more of your life, the cathedral? Like, say you only in college, you only visited 4 times.
The cathedral has all kinds of activities, they had a great gift shop. We'd have to shop in every Christmas and then go to the service now and then concerts. They had a great chorus, and I sang in the chorus of the church I was going to there. I knew people in that, so it was just logical that you availed yourself of the opportunity.
Yeah, that opportunity is an exciting opportunity.
I avail myself of most opportunities, I'll tell you.
All right, so talk about your biggest highlights of your career. You said because you're a journalist and stuff like that in certain ways?
Yeah, my career was wife and mother. We lost 2 children. We had a child that was born dead and another child that died of brain cancer at age 3. And so we got a late start, but all during the 60s, I was having children and raised. And I made sure that dinner was on the table every night at 6:30, and I expected them to be there, which they usually were. And except when the soccer and all that team things got in and they grew older. But I volunteered for a lot of things. So you name it, I probably had a hand in it.
All right. So volunteer, always going. That's you.
Always. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Life is an all-you-can-eat buffet, I'll tell you, and most people are starving.
So tell me how, just to keep that attitude at 96, what keeps you going?
The same that it did when I was losing the babies. You have to maintain a positive and upbeat attitude, and that, how you endure is much more important than that which must be endured. So,
do you think it has a lot to do with your faith that keeps you going? What would you say? Your faith, Anne?
I'm sorry, yeah.
I was going to ask you the question is, do you feel that your faith has a lot to what keeps you going?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yes.
Ultimately.
Well, and still is. Now that I'm close, it's changed a little bit. No, but I've always mixed nature with religion, too. That's something that I've always felt strongly about, that it's all one. It's all God's world.
Exactly. So ultimately, at 96, seeing where the world is today, that's my question.
Fine. Absolutely fine. I really am.
Give me the reasons why you're horrified.
First, I watch all of the nature shows on TV. So I don't watch much fiction. I watch mostly nonfiction. And all of the methane explosions and the tundra and the melting of the ice and people denying it. And people have gotten a lot less civil than they used to be, I think. And of course, religion is not as strong as it used to be, I don't think.
So it's hard to see this in your 96 years, seeing those things. What about the evolution of things like AI? What are your thoughts about that?
There again, now that's one thing we have here. We have a lifelong learning, and we did take a number of sessions explaining AI. There again,
ChatGPT?
Oh, we won't go into chat. Yeah, I've been tempted to ask him a question, but I know people that have. I belong to a portrait and group here. And one gentleman asked the chat GPT to write a sonnet that had a spring finger theme, and darn if it didn't, and he didn't tell us. And it was a pretty good sonnet. I know what it can do. However, I have friends that are college professors, and it really is iffy.
Let's talk about, so the book is a little bit older children, and the frogs and toads, so people in nature are going to enjoy this. And in the book, do you highlight a lot of the Washington National Cathedral in certain ways?
I had to get the plants together with the toad, and which meant a tour through the cathedral, a very limited tour, obviously. But you have to see how he did it to read the book. But I got in there with the addition of another character.
All right. Best place we can find information. This is such a pleasure. And what's the best place you can pick up your book and learn more about the book? Where can we go?
I guess Amazon.
All right. So we can pick up your book on Amazon.
I think so, yes.
Okay. And the title of the book again is Close Friends, Cathedral Adventure, correct?
Correct.
All right. We really appreciate it, Ann. Is another book in the works?
Heavens no. I've got 2 other projects that I've got to finish the genealogy for one thing. I've got 40 archival boxes of letters. Our family wrote letters, and they're priceless. Of course, nobody can read them.
You should finish the archive and make it a book.
No, I also like to do art. So anyway.
Okay. Thank you again, Ann, for coming by.
Thank you.
Take care. And your website is annwardcrocker.com. Appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. You're listening and watching The Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back.